Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy.
And today we're going to be talking about, well, apparently P. Diddy is now chasing after influencers who might be speaking things about him or some other celebrity.
And Andrew Tate, false allegations seem to be getting dropped.
And now apparently the US wants to actually start World War III before Trump even gets in there.
And Trudeau's Green New Scam.
And also now Trudeau is apparently against immigration.
And Trump, he keeps winning. Charges dropped, much like Andrew Tate.
Yeah. So the story that we covered yesterday about Amala Epinobi, who is I wouldn't say influencer, I'd say she's a commentator or political pundit who used to work for PragerU and now is off on her own. Well, she came out with a story that yesterday two private investigators came to her house and started to question her whether she was being paid by somebody to talk about P. Diddy and the way she has been doing, which is negatively. And she said, no, nobody pays me. And apparently these investigators have been going on to just her, but to a bunch of different influencers. And we have updates on that story. But first, we have the story directly from Amala's mouth from yesterday. So
Amala or Kamala?
Amala.
Just joking, I know who she is.
Amala Epinobi. She's great.
Yeah, she...
And she did go into it during her show, but now there has been more influencers coming out, and somebody actually captured these two private investigators, the brief snippet of that video. Somewhat. And like they started saying, like the company that the one we're with, but then they didn't want to mention the company that they're with. So I mean, that's kind of scary.
Well, this whole thing seems a little strange to me. First of all, these guys are private investigators, and they're very big and intimidating. If you want to go talk to these influencers and actually get information out of them, you want to send somebody a little less intimidating, a little bit more inviting to talk to, maybe even a female. One female, one non-intimidating male. You get the two biggest goons you can find and go question, are you influencers? What's going on? You're not going to want to tell them anything. When he asked them to leave the property, they start quoting the law, but didn't they want to cooperate and work with him, get information? You don't tell them somebody you're not going to leave the property like that.
And apparently they also told Amala that they were ex-law enforcement, but they're not current law enforcement, and they're private, and they work for a company, but they're not hired by anybody. It's all a weird situation, and I mean,
Well, a lot of people are thinking that celebrities sent them to get influence and things. I really get government vibes off of these guys. I know a lot of people on social media really haven't been reporting on Diddy so much. Information has been coming out, but it's very confusing. So people will tell the odd story here or there. But by sending these goons out to all these influencers' house and looking very shady, not answering questions, it makes the influencer community get very interested in the stories and maybe wanting to report on Diddy stories. So maybe it's not what it appears to be, and maybe these people actually want more Diddy stories to be.
maybe, or it might be like some celebrity that is now scared that their names are going to be
But they're
popping up more and more.
They're going the
in
wrong way
trial.
about it.
Yes, of course they are, because I think that's the way the world used to work with celebrities, and they could do anything, they could pay anybody off. But with the more citizen reporters, influencers, political pundits out there, I think they're kind of starting to understand that they don't have the control over the things they did used to have a lot of control over.
Yeah. I mean, people aren't getting paid for these stories, but they are getting paid in views, I guess, from YouTube and things like this. So to think they're getting paid from a private source, I don't know. It seemed a little strange.
And I mean, it shows also, I think there's a big kind of, not precedent being set, but with the whole Trump effect that we've seen with other things, from Hamas trying to say like, oh, sorry, no, we're not doing this anymore, to other things that have happened in the world. I mean, this could be also that they're actually now terrified that real things might come out, because they're talking about releasing the JFK files and other files that they were trying to keep secret for so long. And now with this, I mean, maybe even, I don't think Epstein, but maybe even Epstein. So
yeah, I mean, if Trump wants to get true power, he's an outsider coming in, and he really needs to knock down the Uniparty. And the Uniparty has one big weakness, and that's everything they've covered up over the past: the JFK assassination, the Martin Luther King assassination, so on and so forth. So all Trump has to do is really release a bunch of files and show how shady the government is, and nobody's going to want to vote for a uniparty anymore. And I think they know that. So Trump's in a very strong position. And if he's smart, he will release all these things. He's got nothing to lose at this point. They've already come for his head. So
yeah, and I mean, somebody else's head who they've been coming for over and over again. I don't agree with him. I don't like him. Uninterested in him.
Oh no! Anytime he would come up, or I would say something,
because I don't really like him.
Okay.
But so, according to the Guardian, Romanian appeals court finds flaws in case against Andrew Tate. Judges order prosecutors to withdraw or amend indictment against self-styled misogynist influencer. That's how they wrote it. I didn't write it that way. It says
but you picked the article.
It was the only one that kind of was out there, but a court in Romania has ruled that one of the public prosecutor's cases against the self-styled Andrew Tate contains numerous irregularities and ordered them to amend or withdraw it within 5 days. In a setback for the country's anti-organized crime prosecuting unit, DICOT, the Bucharest Court of Appeal said on Tuesday it considered some of the defense's objections valid and had found several flaws in the indictment. And it might boil down to the fact that these girls that were accusing him were actually, it was a pre-planned, premeditated thing that they did.
Oh, yeah. I mean, right
But
from
you
the
know a
beginning,
lot more about it.
I know
so
a lot
you go.
about this case. They had the cell phone records of these girls. They were talking about how they were bored at Andrew Tate's house, blah, blah, blah. And they had conspired to make a plan against him to make big money. And then the government was involved in this as well. I mean, Andrew Tate was standing up against a lot of what wokeism was. And he was, I guess, the main character in the fight against wokeism in a lot of ways. I would also say that they've confiscated tens of millions of dollars of his property. It looks like they're going to have to give that back. They used illegal methods of sequestering witnesses that were only supposed to be used when people thought they might die. So they would get their testimony just in case they were ill or something like that. The judges say, no, you're going to have to get this girl in court, and there has to be a cross-examination. And now the prosecutor's like, oh, we can't do that. So,
Yes.
do you have anything to say about this, or?
Well, I mean, it just goes to prove that I go back to the whole Trump effect. I think that since Tate has quite a bit of influence within the Trump sphere, they might now be scared in Romania that Trump is getting in, and now maybe Tate will have a little bit more support from his own government, more support than the one he has been having, which is just
he's gonna have a ton of support. Him and Trump Jr. are good buddies. He's well in with the whole Trump Crusaders, and thank God, because who knows? They had such flimsy evidence, but they're taking people to court over these things constantly. They did the same thing to Trump himself. So I'm just really glad to see that, his friends are coming to back him up. I'm sure they have his phones tapped. So I'm sure once Trump got in, he made a congratulatory phone call and may have talked to Trump Jr. and other people within that sphere. And the Ukrainian government was like, oh shit, this Romanian government is a lot more connected than we don't want to push this issue anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, I think they already knew that, but with the current government, it was a lot harder for Tate to even get heard by anybody within the government.
Yeah, a lot
and
of
nobody was willing to do anything for him.
You'd see a lot of the time the Andrew Tate case would really flare up when he started speaking out about Ukraine and Russia, and the West did not like that at all, especially because he had so much reach online. So they really wanted to shut him up, and that's when I seen a lot of these cases starting to go forward. With Trump coming in, this whole Ukraine thing is probably going to be over pretty quick, or at least that's what I hope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's our next story, because apparently now Ukraine decided to, with kind of the permission of the U.S.
The U.S. finally gave permission
to fire several U.S.-made longer-range missiles.
Not several.
I'm just reading the headline.
Oh, okay.
So according to the AP, the Associated Press, Ukraine fired several U.S.-made longer-range missiles into Russia for the first time.
Okay. They weren't just authorized to do several strikes. They were authorized to do unlimited strikes deep within the heart of Russia as far as they could go. Now, right now, it's not that these missiles can't go too far into Russia. I don't think they're going to be able to hit Moscow. But if they send somebody with one of these missiles into Russia and then launch it from inside Russia, they may be able to hit Moscow. And that would create potentially a World War III situation. Mm-hmm. Also, Russia has changed their nuclear doctrine based on the aggression of the U.S., NATO, and Ukraine. And rightfully so.
Yes. And I mean, obviously, this move is coming right before Biden steps out, and maybe even to leave an even tougher situation for Trump than the one that he had planned, which he said he would get the war done, over and done with, even before he came into the role.
Well, this thing is going to come to an end as soon as Trump's in office, unless Biden can escalate it to a point where all of Europe's involved or something crazy happens. Everybody knows Trump's going to stop this thing, and the West really doesn't want it. They want to make Trump's transition as hard as possible. Mm-hmm. And Trump really wants to make a statement with world peace, because that's what's really going to influence his legacy most. So I think he wants to get peace negotiations within Israel, and how he's going to do that is tell them maybe they're on their own with Iran, and I don't think they want to go in on their own with Iran. And as far as Ukraine goes, he's going to probably give Russia any land that they've conquered so far and just bring the thing to a quick conclusion. Now, I keep saying every time we talk about this Ukraine story, and it's only because I think a lot of people don't realize all the shady stuff Ukraine's been involved in. And I always bring up first the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. It got blown up by Ukraine, according to the U.S., according to Seymour Hersh, according to the UK. Now it's, I guess, common knowledge that Ukraine blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. That Nord Stream pipeline was basically the way Germany got cheap energy, not just Germany, but all of Europe. It was dispersed out of there, and it's really collapsed Germany's manufacturing base. You don't have somebody that's an ally blowing up one of your pipelines. If they do, that doesn't make them an ally anymore. But somehow Ukraine's still in the good books of Germany, the U.S., and everybody else. So I don't know.
Yeah, sorry, I was switching. Yeah, I mean, do you think this could escalate it to the point where a lot of people are kind of saying it will?
I think they've now provoked Russia with these long-range missile strikes, and what's going to happen, Russia's going to come back hard and heavy. take it back as much land as they want. They may even go after the last city that's left along the water. So then Ukraine will become a landlocked country. Before this, Russia was progressing at a moderate pace. Now they might go really heavy until Trump gets in. Once Trump gets in, they'll negotiate for the land that they've conquered so far. They should have not provoked Russia at this point. This thing is coming to an end. I just keep saying that, and it's just craziness. And I mean, how this whole thing first started was they created a coup inside the country. The U.S. did. I mean, Victoria Nuland was there passing out cookies and everything else. This is well known, and everybody knew that Ukraine was Russia's red line, and that's always where they're attacked from. So from a security perspective, Russia needs security in Ukraine. It would be the same if China started mounting troops within Mexico or Canada. The U.S. would have none of it. We had a situation like this before with Cuba, with the Cuban Missile Crisis, where Russia was putting missiles into Cuba. America wasn't having that. So you're putting 57 biolabs in Ukraine. You're blowing up oil pipelines. Like, this is absolutely insane. I guess we'll look for an end to all this to come when Trump gets into office.
Mm-hmm. Do you think now it'll be easier for Trump to kind of end it, or
yeah,
harder? I mean,
well, I think good cop, bad cop always works well. Mm-hmm. So now Trump can come in and play the good cop to the bad cop, and because they did sanction Russia so hard before, Trump has a lot of negotiating tools. He can negotiate the military withdrawal, a land negotiation, a militarization of Ukraine. How much does he want to militarize Ukraine, if at all? Plus, he has all the sanctions over here. So he can not necessarily take off all the sanctions from Russia, but he can agree to a few, which are going to really help Russia's economy, which is already doing extremely well, surprisingly. So, Trump's going to be in a very good situation because Biden's played such the bad cop and put the United States in such a bad situation, but it did give a lot of leverage, I guess.
And was it Germany recently lifted sanctions as well?
Yeah, there's still a lot of sanctions on Russia, so.
But I mean, that's like some steps forward to saying, people might be changing their minds about how badly.
A lot of people don't know what happened within here. Basically, what happened is the U.S. emptied out, or is in the process of emptying out, the manufacturing base from the EU and reorienting it within the United States, because the United States is a safer region and they have cheap energy. So the big winner in this whole thing has been Russia and the U.S. The EU has come out of this thing on bottom. They've emptied out their manufacturing base. Their banking system is going to have to go to a digital currency. It's on the verge of collapse. Then they've lost all geopolitical influence. The big loser in this entire thing is the EU, and all the BRICS countries have come out as the winner, because the Ukraine war for Russia was not so much about what was happening on the ground. It was about creating alliances and a future economy of nationalism, basically through the BRICS. Now, the BRICS wants each individual country to put their national interests first, but to work together. It's a lot different than the EU. The EU wants all the countries to put the EU's interests first and their national interest second, which I think the BRICS model is much better, but the West has quite a big head start on them, so we'll see what happens.
And speaking of the West, and somebody that also just allocated something $1 billion to go to Ukraine still, Canada, and their relentless mission of taxing everybody to extinction and death. So Trudeau, we're going through the G20 summit of idiots. So Trudeau defends the carbon tax at G20 summit, says Canadians who oppose him push misinformation, which is now like the billionth time he calls on misinformation just for people he doesn't agree with or that are telling more of the truth than he ever is. But he said, we're facing misinformation and disinformation by people, conservatives, saying we have to stop the fight against climate change so we can put a little more money in your pockets, Trudeau said at the G20 summit. So he continued to champion his carbon tax at Brazil's G20 Leaders Summit and called for a carbon tax election as being misinformation by the Conservative Party, who Pierre Poilievre has been very ardently criticizing him because that is a big thing that has been taking away from Canadians' everyday money and livelihoods.
Yeah,
And spending money, because a carbon tax has so many more effects than what people and governments, especially the Canadian one, actually want to tell you about.
Yeah, the cat's out of the bag within Canada, but within the rest of the world, it's not. So I think Trudeau's trying to keep this line of the carbon tax is good. So the G20 and the rest of these countries can try to push carbon taxes in their own countries, because within Canada, people already are hyped to his lies and what's going on. Trudeau's claiming you have to pay more in carbon tax, but you'll get more back later on. So he's saying you're going to make more money. Why are they even taking the tax in the first place? It's a blatant lie. Everybody knows it. This carbon tax has made the cost of regular goods go up for everyday Canadians. When you put a carbon tax on oil and natural gas and things like this, it makes every single product in the country go up. Transportation costs go up, printing costs go up. Every single cost is going to go up, which is reflected in the final price of the good, which is a unfair tax on poor and middle class people, because they're the ones that actually end up paying the most for this. And besides this, Trudeau has been lying in his own pockets. What's his climate minister's name is
Guilbeault.
What's his first name?
Stephen.
Yeah, Stephen Guilbeault. Stephen Guilbeault emptied I think it was $257 million into a company that he owned.
Yeah. To help with
the climate. Yeah. But Trudeau has been giving out these contracts to friends and family members for a long time now, and it's all starting to come crashing down on him. The RCMP, which is the Canadian police, have a huge investigation going on him now.
Yeah, and it's not just to friends, it's also to spies.
Yeah, it's completely shut down the Canadian government because Trudeau's refusing to release documents to the police because he's going to be involved in this.
But I mean, do you want to hear him say how fighting climate change is more important than helping struggling Canadians?
Yes, I do.
Our price on pollution gives back more money. 4 times a year.
Pause it.
And a check every.
He's been selling this to Canadians for the past 5 years now, and nobody believes it because they've done the research. But he's selling it to the G20. He has this line. He has these lines well worked out, and they sound good, and he's a great actor. But when people look into all this, the Canadian people are well aware of what's going on. And please, if you're watching from a different country, don't believe governments that tell you this line of bullcrap.
And I mean, they also see it on their grocery stores, because this is one of the many multiple things that a carbon tax affects, the ability to buy food.
Let's continue with this.
3 months that actually more than offsets the price on pollution. And then if they decide that, at one point they can take their bike more often or insulate their home a little better or make choices that are reducing their consumption of fossil fuels, they get to keep more of that check we're sending them. So it actually has become a way of helping with affordability, of putting more money in the pockets of people who are struggling. Because when we talk about fighting climate change, everyone has the sense that, oh no, big businesses and millionaires are going to find ways around it. And it's always hardworking consumers and ordinary folks that bear the brunt of the changes. And what we've had to do in Canada, what we've successfully done, is change that dynamic so our fight against climate change goes hand in hand with affordability. But that's where, as I was talking about earlier, we're facing a level of attacks, of misinformation, of disinformation by people who are saying, no, we have to stop the fight against climate change in Canada so we can put a little more money in your pockets, even though that's exactly the wrong thing for the planet. And it's actually the wrong thing for money in their pocket.
This came from the liberal progressive global order, and I don't think they know what to do because this whole climate hoax is really coming crashing down around them. People are waking up to it, and now they have a true leader in Trump, which is the new leader of the free world, who's saying exactly the opposite. And they're trying to figure out they're going to try to figure out a line of attack on Trump, and they probably want to use this, but they've been lying about it for so long it's not going to work anymore.
And I mean, the ways that they lie about these kinds of things, he completely twisted and tried really hard to rework what actually happens with a carbon tax, which is when you tax carbon and emissions and the things that are needed to produce goods and services, everything from plastic to farming to anything to do with agriculture, business, everything gets affected by this. So the higher prices and the huge inflation you're seeing are only going to continue to get worse with this. And no, the fact that you maybe used your bike once or twice, so you get taxed a little bit less, you shouldn't be being taxed by this at all. Like, this shouldn't really be a tax, because these kinds of measures don't help. And there's been multiple studies now by many different countries that were thinking of going this way and then decided not to, because it becomes a burden on the actual person and their actual populations and not on the things they want to be taxing.
Well, when I looked at this thing from a bird's eye view, what I seen was a complete deindustrialization of the West. This happened in Germany. Well, we're going to shut down all of our coal plants. We're going to go to green energy. Canada said the same. Now that even on top of that, they wanted to start taxing the residents. None of that green energy crap worked in these cold weather countries like Canada, like Germany. Places like Chile, yeah, maybe it works a lot better. But in these places like Canada that are doing more than the share and expecting their citizens to pay the cost, it didn't work. And it's not working, and they're trying to hold the line. And it's all falling apart around it, and I'm glad to see it, for one. And let's just remember who did the most to help the environment, and that was Donald Trump when he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord. There was quotas that he was supposed to meet to improve the environment and lower carbon emissions. And once he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, he no longer had to meet those standards. But what did he do? He exceeded those standards. So it's pretty amazing what Trump's able to do when he says drill, baby, drill.
Yes. And I mean, I think that's also, you have to make the balance and the cost effectiveness measures regarding what's more worth it to keep your population being able to afford regular basic goods and needs and services, or doing a little bit for the climate that doesn't actually do much, because the biggest polluters in the planet are not even the countries that are trying to implement all of this. And those countries won't follow in your lead, as a lot of people think they will.
Listen, there was always an easy solution for this, and it was called nuclear. And you didn't have to build huge nuclear plants. They have the ability to make small, portable-sized nuclear plants now, which is very interesting, even home-sized nuclear. So this is obviously the future, but when you were talking to these environmentalists, they said, no, 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 no. And nuclear is a lot cleaner than what it used to be. So the fact that AI is emerging so fast and they're going to need so much energy, the U.S. is going to deregulate, start building nuclear, and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah, especially now that Elon and a lot of more tech bros are in there
America's
who want
gonna
to be able to use those things that they're building and creating, which require millions and millions more energy than is actually now being produced by any country, really.
You can't produce it. This is the thing. I've been in debates.
It's impossible to produce.
I've been in debates with people that are all pro climate change, and when I bring up AI, they say, "Oh, well,
against climate change."
Well, they say it needs to be green energy with fossil fuels with nuclear." No, it can't be, because even if you had all the fossil fuel energy and all of the green energy and you combine that, it's not enough for the energy consumption needs of AI. The only way to provide that is nuclear, and they haven't looked at the actual statistics. That's why they say, oh, we can just supply AI with green energy. It's not possible. And if you try to make it possible, you're going to handicap your country in the battle of AI, and whoever wins that battle is going to end up becoming a great superpower. And right now, China is catching up to the U.S.
Yeah, speaking about catching up and realizing that the statistics that you were peddling are not true, well, now Canadians react as Trudeau admits to mistakes in immigration, outlines a new plan. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada will soon see a significant decline in immigration as the government attempts to fix its mistakes. Oopsie. In a 6-minute video shared on Sunday, Trudeau stated that Canada's population has grown baby boomer fast. It hasn't grown by itself, it's grown because of incentives. But the government plans to temper growth by reducing the number of immigrants in the next 3 years, and only in the next 3 years, apparently. And he said, I'm going to let you in on what happened where we made some mistakes and why we're taking this big turn. He said, looking back as the post-pandemic boom cooled and business no longer needed the additional labor help, the federal team, we could have acted quicker and turned off the taps faster. Even though a year ago, he was very proud about his immigration plan and initiatives and all of the new immigrants that he was bringing in, 500 million.
Yeah, he's basically floated the Canadian economy on the back of these immigrants, which has increased GDP, but every single Canadian citizen that lives in the country is paying the cost with their housing, with their food cost, with the crime cost, with all these other costs that come with massive immigration. Canada used to have one of the best immigration systems, and it was just a small amount of immigrants that were highly trained that the economy actually needed. They hand selected which immigrants would come into the country. It was a fair amount. It was a good amount. And the country prospered for a long time. Trudeau wanted short-term gains, so he increased the amount of immigrants coming into the country. I don't know how many times, but it was like 10 times.
It doubled.
It was a lot more. Mm-hmm. And it's just insane that, Trudeau is cashing in on this, cashing in on the economy, but the Canadian citizen is the one paying the cost. Their wages are not increasing with the price of housing because there's so many immigrants competing for the jobs. People are having 3-4 jobs at a time. I had 4 jobs before I left Canada. Mm-hmm. So 100 hours a week I was working just to pay my rent.
Yes. And I mean, you said you watched his little video saying oopsie on immigration, but...
Okay, I would say this. I know Trudeau very, very, very well, and so do all the Canadian people because he's been in office for a decade.
Forever.
So they know he's completely full of crap now. But when I did see the video, it had just popped up randomly on my YouTube, so I took a look at it, and I was very impressed. If this was not Trudeau, and I didn't know, and he hadn't been lying for as long as he had been, and it was just a regular politician, this is the way you apologize for a mistake. You come clean. You say, this is how I came to this new way of thinking. There was a couple red flags in there where he said, well, I'm only going to do it for 3 years. Obviously, this is a load of crap, and he wants to continue to allow a bunch of immigrants, millions of immigrants into the country after 3 years. He's just trying to win voters. Mm-hmm. It's well known within Canada, and Trudeau was one of the first politicians to do this. He paid thousands of dollars a day for polling, and he basically governed off what the polls said. So he would have the majority of the population.
Which, I mean, technically, that's way more populist than anything any other government has done recently in the West.
Yeah, but it wasn't true populism because he would take these polls and then give out a bunch of propaganda through the media to influence the way people were thinking. And then because he was the one that could call the election, he would call it the exact right time. COVID is how he got reelected. He called a snap election during COVID after a ton of propaganda and polling of the general population. So he knew when was the exact right time to call an election. Yes. But let's try to sit through this.
A little bit. It's 6 minutes.
We'll pause it and talk crap about Trudeau along the way.
Just to get an idea of what he said.
Immigration. Let's talk about it. In the last 2 years, our population has grown really fast, like baby boom fast. And increasingly, bad actors like big colleges and big chain corporations have been exploiting our immigration system for their own interests. So we're doing something major. We're reducing the numbers of immigrants that will come to Canada for the next 3 years. Today,
3 years only.
And he seemed so proud about it for 3 years.
What happened, where we made some mistakes, and why we're taking this big turn. There are 2 kinds of immigration in Canada. The one you probably think of most is permanent immigration, like when families come to Canada to settle and call it home. Every year, the government determines the right number of permanent residents that we want to admit. That's how it's been done for decades. But a plan that only talks about permanent immigration misses the other
Pause it for a sec.
Temporary immigration.
I think you're going to see a lot of liberal propaganda like this. If they're smart, they're going to have to, if they own up to their old mistakes and show their new way of thinking, I think this is the way forward for these liberal governments. They're going to have new faces. They can't have somebody that's been in there a decade like Trudeau, but that's enough of the video. But if anybody wants to watch the rest of the video, it is on YouTube.
Yeah, I can put the link.
And I will say I do not like Trudeau, but it was a good move by him, especially in a possible election season. And
Which, I mean, up to now, he's still, like, the ball is still kind of in his court, even though he keeps losing it as more and more of the MPs kind of turn their backs on him.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, there probably will be an election in 2025, either by forcing his hand.
I'm open in 2024, Christmas.
No, it's too soon. But I mean, even then, with
2025, there has to be an election. He can't, but before the end of 2025, they can call a snap election at any point if the opposition gangs up against him. So.
And I mean, the Conservatives probably will come in, and that probably will be a good thing. But we have to remember, I mean, never worship at the altar of politicians. So we'll still have to see.
Especially Canadian politicians. But with Trump in office, Canada can ride the coattails of America if it makes itself great again.
And I've said many times, a Conservative government might just be the same but in reverse as the Liberal government was, because a lot of laws and a lot of legislation has been pushed through in order to give so much power to the Liberals that now the Conservatives are going to have all of those same bills in there, and they might not be so keen on taking power away from themselves. They might just actually start using it just on the other side.
Yeah, I'm expecting freedoms to be stripped in a completely different way, but still to be stripped if the Conservatives do get in. I think they're not going to go crazy in all these cultural issues, but people are going to breathe a sigh of relief. But while they're breathing a sigh of relief, the freedoms are going to get stripped. I fully expect the digital currency to be within Canada by the year 2026, 2027 at the latest.
Yeah, they've also already started touting, and I saw that this morning, they've started touting a new way to come into the country. So if you're coming by car, now they're going to pre-screen you in a sort of ArriveCAN 2.0, where you're going to have to submit your photo, license plates, and who's coming with you, why are you coming, where did you come from, before you arrive to the checkpoint, which is obviously pretty much a way to implement a sort of, it's going to be way easier if you had this digital ID. That way you don't have to submit all of this information because it's already all within that digital ID package. So, I mean, there are still steps coming in for digital ID and for centralized.
Yeah, well, I will say this, with a conservative government, even if they are stripping freedoms, their governing policy is going to be a lot more based in reality. And with the U.S. just to the south of them, and the Trump administration and the people he's trying to appoint right now are really preaching freedom, smaller government. And if the Canadian people do see that, they're going to get angry when their government is stripping them of their freedoms, but the U.S. government is giving the U.S. people more and more freedoms. So maybe there's an opportunity there for the Canadian people to speak up.
Finally.
And,
hopefully.
not get their freedom stripped, hopefully.
Yeah. And I mean, somebody that will not get his freedom stripped even after a lot of persecution is Donald Trump, because according to CNN Politics, Manhattan DA agrees to postpone Donald Trump's sentencing in hush money case, but opposes dismissal. And this just happened today. So the Manhattan DA's office said Tuesday it would agree to postpone Donald Trump's sentencing in the hush money case to give prosecutors time to litigate the president-elect's expected motion to dismiss the case. In a letter to Judge Merchan, the DA also acknowledged that Trump is not likely to be sentenced until after the defendant's upcoming presidential term, which would be, 2029? But the DA says Trump's felony convictions should stand. And I mean, this is one of many other cases that are coming down. And in this one is where Trump was convicted in May on 32 counts of falsifying business records over payments made to his then lawyer, Michael Cohen, to reimburse a $130,000 hush money payment made to Stormy Daniels, adult film star, to keep her from speaking out about an alleged affair before the 2016 election. And Trump continues to deny the affair. And I mean, Merchan is still saying that the DA should not dismiss the conviction. But for now, at least, it's been put on a back burner, basically, until after the. Well,
this was obvious. This was obviously election interference and nothing more than that. Now that he's not only won the election, but won a mandate from the American people, all this crap is being dropped because it not only didn't work, it ended up helping him. It kept him in the news headlines. It made people relate to him, especially minorities in the Black and Latino communities. He's being unfairly prosecuted, and that was obvious.
Yes. I was trying to find the Daily Wire version of the story, but for some reason, Daily Wire is not able to be properly seen on my computer.
Oh yeah, Daily Wire.
Interesting.
By the way, if Daily Wire is watching this, it's been messing up
Yes,
on my
because
phone
they
as well. It doesn't work with the news section of the Daily Wire. Only works if I'm not logged into my Wi-Fi. Every other part of the website works, and it's been like this for months now.
Yeah.
But I don't know what's going on. So
Well, it might be that we are in Mexico, so maybe they have some sort of not blocker, but more checks to go through.
Well, here's what I'll relate to this story a little bit, and that is who's his nomination for his AG again?
Matt Gaetz.
Yeah. So Matt Gaetz is going to possibly take the AG position, which is Attorney General. And I guess there's a story going around that he was on Trump's plane and Trump was talking to different people. He was thinking about AG, and Matt Gaetz was the only one that came forward and said, "I'll go over there and I'll take heads." So I really hope he does, and I really hope Trump has everybody in line so he can just have recess appointments. Or the Republicans get in line behind Trump and say, these are your appointments. We're going to back you. He has the House. He has the Senate. So,
and I mean, this is one of many other cases that we've seen fall for, in favor of Trump, where now that he's been elected, they're like, oh, okay, all of this was just political persecution. We didn't actually have much of a case, and we were using all of our cronies to be able to continue to make these cases, seem important and actually have some sort of impact. But now that they kind of lost, and in the way that they lost, where it's kind of hard to say that they didn't really lose, well, now everything's kind of crumbling apart, not just for Kamala, but for everybody who tried to go after him.
They turned Trump into a cult icon with these assassinations and all these trials. I mean, it's cool to be a Trump supporter now. And it's funny to say because I've been a Trump supporter for a long, long, long time now.
Well, I was one before you. You used to make fun of me. That's the way it used to go.
But like I was saying, I was watching another political channel, and he said he was going in through an airport in New York, which New York is supposed to be a blue state, and there was a kiosk within the airport was all Trump merchandise, and not old Trump merchandise from the election. It was saying some of the merchandise said, I voted for a felon. So this is new merchandise. People are buying it. People are getting behind Trump. America is going to become great again. I can't wait to see these tariffs.
Yeah, we're seeing blonde Miss Universes and all of the NFL people doing their touchdown dances, and then at the UFC as well, doing the little Trump dance. And he's managed to remain kind of like a cultural meme-ish icon within the internet. And I think that also helped him with all the younger people and the people of color, as they call them.
Well, there's a story every day because there's so many people in his little entourage that are really game-changing figures, such as Vivek Ramaswamy, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard. Oh, yeah, we were talking about that Russia story.
And they all used to be Democrats.
We talked about that Russia story earlier, and I've been wanting to say this for a while now, actually. So she's an officer in the U.S. military. Every 5 years, she has to go through a top...
Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard has to go through a top secret security clearance. This is one of the top security clearances in the United States. She wouldn't have passed it ever. And she's been an officer for 20 years. That means she's had to go through probably 4 security clearances. Mm-hmm. And she's already cleared those. So to say she's a Russian asset is not only complete propaganda, but whoever says it just looks like an absolute liar. And they think you're a fool if you believe it.
Well, then, I mean, it started with the Clinton campaign, peddling that rumor, and then it just kind of was very quiet for a while. And now that she's Republican and completely in support of Trump and now has a position within his cabinet, well, now everybody's peddling it again, but there is no logical evidence, and all of the things she said and done and exactly the security clearances clearly show that it's just fabricated because they're scared. And when they're scared, what does Robert Barnes say?
Confession through projection.
Yes, when they get scared. So they confess what they do by saying that the other person's doing it. And I think that was true during the whole persecution of Trump, but also during the whole electoral time, the election season. Everything that they were saying about MAGA and the Republicans was actually probably things that they were doing and that they were plotting and that they were trying to do, but were not successful in.
Well, I just hate when I see AOC on the news talking about Tulsi Gabbard's a Russian asset and she's a threat to democracy. This is crazy. Tulsi Gabbard has served her country for 20 years at a very high and elite level, has seen combat. Well, AOC served people at a bar. There's nothing wrong with serving people at a bar, but you don't go calling out somebody that served their country for 20 years like that and calling them a Russian asset, which is a complete fabrication and a lie.
Mm-hmm. And also, which race also finally got called, where they were debating if they should include the illegal ballots or not?
I didn't know about that. Maybe it was Pennsylvania. They were counting the illegal ballots, and CNN, I think it was CNN, it was some liberal news network, which was actually live on the air counting the ballots as if they were legal ballots, when courts had come in twice with injunctions saying that those are illegal ballots and they're not allowed to be counted.
So yeah, it was about the date errors, the error, like ballots with like wrong signatures or errors
so what
in the
happened with
date.
that?
So hold on, pulling it up. So Trump campaign official says Pennsylvania Dems will face jail time over ballot recount. I mean, this is, I think, just like a hopefully they will, but it is true that it was basically adjourned that they could not keep counting them.
Oh, that's great. No,
But they said they will keep counting them.
They've said that twice now, and they kept counting them, and the liberal news is putting it live on the air like these are actual ballots, and that the Democrats are actually winning some of these Senate races now.
So Pennsylvania State, hold on, let me put that up. So Pennsylvania State Supreme Court on Monday weighed in on a flashpoint amid ongoing vote counting in the U.S. Senate election between Democratic Senator Bob Casey and Republican David McCormick, ordering counties not to count mail-in ballots that lack a correct handwritten date on the return envelope. The order is a win for McCormick and a loss for Casey as the campaigns prepare for a statewide recount and press counties for favorable ballot counting decisions while election workers are sorting through thousands of provisional ballots. McCormick's campaign called it a massive setback for Casey, and the Democrats are angry and they want to keep counting the ballots that they shouldn't be counting now, as ordered by the Supreme Court on Pennsylvania.
They've been told multiple times, and they keep doing it, and they want to talk about democracy dying. Well, they're trying to kill it with these ballots illegally.
Yeah, again,
being counted.
it's the whole confession through projection.
And I will say, we didn't have it ready to pull up, but Joe Rogan was making a statement on his show, or not a statement, he was talking on his show about Barack Obama. And I completely agree with him. Barack Obama has lost all credibility after this election. Joe Rogan had a lot of respect for Barack Obama before this election. So did I. Mm-hmm. Even though I didn't support Democrats. And now when I start looking back and analyzing things, it really all started this race division and all this woke agenda really started with Barack Obama, and he was really trying to reorganize the Democratic Party in this toxicity. But he spoke in such a way, man, he really had relevance, and he had a lot of respect from a lot of people. But after this last election, the way he was speaking down to specifically black men, just made him look weak and feeble.
And that made all those men go vote for Trump.
Yeah.
Because Trump at least tells them, I want to help you out. I want you to be able to afford food and gas and everything and live a better life and be taxed less. And the other guy, Obama, is telling them, well, if you don't vote for a woman, you're a horrible man. You're not even a black man if you don't vote for a woman.
I guess the best Democratic president, when you look back in the modern age, it was always Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. But now it's looking like more like BJ Bill.
Oh, Clinton?
Yeah, Clinton. Overall, the economy was doing well at the time. And if you have to gauge all the modern Democratic presidents against one another from the 80s forward, most of the 80s was forward. So then it would be the 90s because Reagan was. Mm-hmm. So since 92 forward, I guess you're looking at Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton's looking better and better. The reason Bill Clinton looks so bad is because of his wife, Hillary. That's the truth.
And because of what he did.
Well, what he did is what he did. He would only look a little bit bad. When people talk about Bill Clinton now, they really look at him with disdain because of his wife. Before, you would just look at him like, okay, you did something wrong. But now, Hillary's just crazy Hillary.
And disgusting Bill.
Well, I don't mind Bill. I like Bill.
Because, for me, it's the hypocrisy of it all. That, he did that and actually had to confront it on a national stage. And, I mean, most of the Trump stuff is alleged. All of the Trump stuff is still kind of alleged. And yet they're excoriating him every day for years on end.
Yeah, well, I didn't say Republican presidents.
No, but what I'm saying is, like, if you compare what Clinton did, where he actually came out on a national stage and admitted it and said sorry and blah, 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 as opposed to Trump, who's all of the things that have happened against him about women and misappropriate things with women have all just been alleged. There hasn't really been any concrete evidence, even though they try to say that there was with that one crazy lady during the lawsuit that he had with the crazy old lady that said that she got touched inside Bloomberg's or wherever.
Yeah, that allegation.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying the allegations are...
Wait, let's continue with this. Because she couldn't even remember the year this incident happened.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like, Clinton actually did the things, and I mean, there's a lot of proof and evidence.
Yeah, but
Trump didn't.
Look, of all the modern Democratic presidents, I'm going with Bill, I guess.
I'm saying he's fine. But now I was making a point about the hypocrisy of the media and the people that discuss it.
But I will say Trump is in quite the position now. He could be the greatest pivotal figure in modern political history if things go right with this term. If he's able to negotiate world peace,
especially now,
if he's able to rearrange and put the American people first, if he's able to do this tariff thing and have it actually work out, and that's going to completely reorient the tax system and potentially the way the American economic system work. If these things work out for him, he will be the greatest political figure in not even modern history, in all American history, which is crazy to say because Trump's always touting how he's the greatest president since Abraham Lincoln, and you laugh at it because it's funny. And somebody else said he was the greatest president since George Washington. Now, I don't actually agree with those statements, but I will say after this term, he has the potential to maybe be that.